Brahmanath. Om. Om. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Swastha.
Good morning, students. Hey, I hope you all are doing good. Let's begin a new chapter today from book 2, The Open Window by Saki. Saki, his real name, Hector Hugh Munro, born on 18 December 1870, died on 13 November 1916. Better known by the pen name Saki. The real name was Hector Hugh Munro, but his pen name, what is his pen name? Pen name actually means an assumed name by the writer. Okay? An assumed name by a writer that he or she uses instead of his or her real name. So the pen name was Saki. An eminent, he was actually an eminent English novelist and a short story writer. And Saki's stories used to depict human behavior in a very interesting and playful situation. Clear? So I'll get to the warm-up. Mark the title of the story and the dramatic opening. It is set in the drawing room of an upper-class village house. Mr. Nuttall is received by a young girl of 15 when he calls on her aunt. When she comes to know that the guest knows nothing about her aunt but her name and address, the self-possessed young lady narrates an eerie tale of family tragedy to shock the highly strung visitor. Read the story and enjoy how the girl befools the adults with her pranks. So your self-possessed means calm and confident. You can see I've written it for you, calm and confident. And E-E-R-I-E, eerie means actually strange and frightened tales or stories. Clear? And befools means to make a fool of. So the warm-up itself says, when we read the title, the open window. The open window, when we mark the title or the heading of the story, it suggests something which is dramatic. And actually it's a dramatic open in a drawing room where Mr. Nuttall, Mr. Frampton Nuttall, he goes to Mrs. Sappleton's house. And there Mrs. Sappleton is not present in the drawing room. She's there in the house, but she's busy doing some other work and she's not present in the drawing room. So who actually greets Mr. Nuttall? Niece. The niece of Mrs. Sappleton. Mrs. Sappleton itself, she's a stranger to Mr. Nuttall, and now the niece, she greets and she welcomes Mr. Nuttall. And after knowing, when she comes to know that Mr. Nuttall knows nobody in that place and he doesn't know anything about Mrs. Sappleton itself, just her name and address. She's a girl, who likes to create story instantly and she likes to play pranks. Pranks means jokes, She asks him to come in and sit and have a chair, and then she says that Mrs. Sappleton will soon come to see him, but till she comes, this self-possessed young girl, self-possessed, I told you it means calm and confident young girl, she boldly says, till then you will have to put up with me. You know, put up means tolerate or endure something. It can mean that you have to last or suffer patiently. You have to be with me. You have to take up me till Mrs. Sappleton arrives. That's what the young girl very calmly and confidently tells Mr. Nuttall, who has come to meet her aunt, Mrs. Sappleton. Frampton Nuttall endeavoured to say the correct something which should duly flatter the niece of the moment without unduly discounting the aunt that was to come. Okay? Endeavoured means try. Endeavour means try. And here discounting means disregarding. So now Mr. Nuttall or Mr. Frampton Nuttall was himself a stranger who didn't know Mrs. Sappleton, to whose house he had been to, and he was a stranger to Mrs. Sappleton. He just knew her name and address, and now she was also not present to welcome him. The niece of Mrs. Sappleton was present, and so he had to speak soothing words, lovable words, which wouldn't disregard the young lady, and the discussion could go on smoothly, or the conversation would go on smoothly till Mrs. Sappleton arrived. Privately, he doubted more than ever whether these formal visits on a succession of total strangers would do much towards helping the nerve cure which he was supposed to be undergoing. So here succession means a series of. Here Mr. Nuttall was now feeling. He had questions in his mind, whether these kind of formal visits could really help him. Here nerve cure means getting rid of the feeling of nervousness. Actually, Mr. Frampton Nuttall was a patient of nerve cure. He had that mental agony, he had nervousness, because of which the doctors had advised him to have a change of place so that he could relax from his mental agony and physical moves. So that's the reason why he had come with a change of place to Mrs. Sappleton's house, and now he was wondering, these kind of formal visits where he doesn't know the person to whose house he has come, and he is again meeting a stranger, the niece of Mrs. Sappleton. How come it was going to help him? I know how it will be. His sister had said when he was preparing to migrate to this rural retreat. Here you can see rural retreat. Migrate means move from one place to another, and rural retreat means a place of refuge, a place and quiet or secluded place in a countryside. Okay, a safe and quiet place or a secluded place in a countryside can be called as rural retreat. So I know how it will be. His sister had said when he was preparing to migrate to this rural retreat, you will bury yourself down there and not speak to a living soul. So when he decided to go to the place, when he decided to migrate means to have a change of place or change the usual place where you live, because he was a patient of nerve cure and doctors had advised him to migrate or leave the place and move on to another new place where he would get a little bit of relaxation from his mental agony or from his nervousness. And so Mr. Frampton Nuttall had been to Sappleton's house, and there his sister quotes him and says that don't go, don't migrate. If you really don't know somebody there, that is going to be really pathetic when you do not know a single soul. Single soul means a single person. As it is, you are a patient of nervousness, nerve cure, and on that, if you do not know anybody over there, not even a single person, it would be really pathetic, or just burying yourself, feeling or getting more nervous over there. And your nerves will be worse than ever from moping. Here, moping means passing time in a dull state of mind. So what does Mr. Frampton Nuttall's sister suggest him? His sister suggests him that don't go to a place, or don't go where you do not know anybody. At least you should know one or two people. Otherwise, you are yourself a patient of nerve cure. You have nervousness. Then you are going to stress yourself further. And instead of passing time in a relaxed manner, you will fall into a dull state of mind. So let's see, what does she say further? I shall just give you letters of introduction to all the people I know there. Some of them, as far as I can remember, were quite nice. So here, Mr. Nuttall's sister tells him that, okay, I know some of the people there. Don't go like a total stranger to that place without knowing anybody. I know few of them. I will give you a letter of introduction. What is this letter of introduction? It means that when you happen to introduce a second party to your friend or a person whom you know, saying that he or she is known to me, kindly take him or her as a guest. Okay? When you introduce the second party to one whom you know. So here what happened? Mr. Nuttall's sister gave Mr. Nuttall a letter of introduction, referring that he is my brother. Kindly entertain him, and details about her brother in the letter, which Mr. Nuttall would refer or give to those people who knew his sister. Clear? So that at least he would know some of the people there, and he wouldn't feel devastating or live in a dull state of mind and have that mental exertion all the time. As it is, he was a patient of nerve cure. Clear? Frampton wondered where Mrs. Sappleton, the lady to whom he was presenting one of the letters of introduction, came into the nice division. Here, nice division means ageable type of horse. Okay, she was at a certain age where she was a nice horse, an ageable type of horse, and so Mr. Frampton Nuttall was actually now thinking whether Mrs. Sappleton really belonged to an ageable type of host. Okay, a nice division. Do you know many of the people round here? Who's asking this? The niece, the young self-possessed girl, okay, who's sitting along with Mr. Nuttall in the drawing room, because Mrs. Sappleton has still not arrived there. So both of them, Mr. Nuttall and the niece, they are having a conversation with each other. They are exchanging thoughts, and in that due process, the niece, she is questioning, do you know many of the people around here? Asked the niece, when she judged that they had sufficient silent communion. Communion means actually sharing of thoughts. So she just wanted to know from Mr. Nuttall that does he know many people here? Is he known to people here? And does he know about her aunt too? That's what she wanted to know from Mr. Nuttall when they were exchanging thoughts and when they were having a conversation with each other in the absence of Mrs. Sappleton. to the question put by the niece that do you know many of the people around here? Frampton Nuttall answers the niece that I do not know anyone. Hardly a soul means hardly nobody. I do not know anyone here. My sister was staying here at the rectory. Rectory here means a house where the rector priest of a church lives. Okay? You know, some 4 years ago, and she gave me letters of introduction to some of the people here. So he further adds that I hardly know anybody here. I'm completely a stranger and the place is completely a strange place to me. He openly clears up his heart to the niece and further he says that my sister was here. She lived here in the rectory, the place where the priest of a church lives 4 years ago, and she has given me letters of introduction to the people here. He made the last statement in a tone of distinct regret. Here, distinct regret means sadness associated with some wrong or disappointment, because he wasn't knowing anybody there, and he was completely ignorant about the place and the people over there. So he couldn't speak with joy or merriness in his tone. He had sadness that was getting associated with some kind of disappointment. So in a very broken voice, which was not very clear, he made this last statement. Then you know practically nothing about my aunt, pursued the self-possessed young lady. Now the young lady puts a second question. She says that means you know nothing about my aunt, right? She's asking this question to Mr. Nuttall. Only her name and address. What does Frampton Nuttall answer? He says that I just know her name and address. Admitted the caller. C-A-L-L-E-R. Here caller means one who has visited. And who has visited? Mr. Frampton Nuttall. So Frampton Nuttall is referred as the caller. And what does he say? That I only know your aunt's name and address. That's it. I do not know anything more than that about your aunt, Mrs. Sappleton. He was wondering whether Mrs. Sappleton was in the married or widowed state. You know, even Mr. Nuttall was ignorant. He didn't even know whether Mrs. Sappleton was married or was in a widowed state. And undefinable. Undefinable here can mean a word or something that you are not associated with, something which is not clear, something which is unknown, okay? And undefinable something about the room seem to suggest masculine habitation. Here masculine habitation means the dwelling of men. Clear? So about the room suggested. So what happened here? An undefinable something. So when Mr. Nuttall was having a conversation with the niece, and when they were exchanging thoughts and the niece was trying to extract that information, that how far he knew the people here and what did he know about her aunt Mrs. Sappleton, and after knowing everything, there Mr. Nuttall was wondering. He was feeling unknown. He was feeling as if he needs to know whether this house there's a male person, whether any male person resides or stays in the house, or is it not at all a masculine habitation. There's no male person here because Mrs. Sappleton itself, she is a lady. Now he met the niece of Mrs. Sappleton. She too is a female, and by then he had not met any man in that house or a male person. So he was quite curious to know Sapleton. So what could be the answer? Mr. Frank Nuttall was a patient of nerve cure. He was suffering from nervousness or mental agony and physical destruction. So he was advised by his doctors to have a change of place so that he could relax himself mentally, and his sister did give him a letter of introduction and sent him to Mrs. Sapleton's house where he could relax himself from the mental agony. Okay, thank you. We will get to part 2 of unit 1 in the next